Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how are you today? Hopefully you are good. In this good opportunity, my friend and I would like to present about problem in translation. Here we go, the presenter's name in this group. The first one is myself, Rizky Abitrisya. My number ID is 193, 201, and 99. And the second presenter is Giovanni Firmansyah. His number ID is 193, 201, and 70. And the third presenter is Muhammad Hafid At-Tariq. His number ID is 193, 201, and 98. In this topic, we would like to present more detail about the first is ambiguity, and the second is lexical and grammatical differences, and the third is multi-word units. It includes idiom and collocation. So, we move to the first problem. It is ambiguity. Ambiguity is a pervasive phenomenon in human dialects. Ambiguity is additionally a thought or circumstance that can be understood in more than one way. It's very difficult to find words that aren't and sentences that are out of context, because some ambiguous way is the rule, not an exception. Here we go. Types of ambiguity. There are three types of ambiguity. The first one is lexical ambiguity, and the second one is structural ambiguity, and the third is phonological ambiguity. So let me explain about lexical ambiguity. Lexical ambiguity is a composing mistake that happens when a sentence contains a word that has more than one meaning. This problem is also called by semantic ambiguity. For example, the businessman went to the bank. The word bank can be interpreted as either a financial institution or a land area next to a river. And the second example is the man next to me is young. The word young can be interpreted as either an expert or young of age. And the third example is she could not bear children. The word bear can be interpreted as either a person who cannot stand children or about one who cannot give birth to children. So we move to the second types of ambiguity. It is structural ambiguity. Structural ambiguity is a structure of sentence that permits more than one interpretations rather than the words in the sentence. For example, Amanda hit John with a book. So there are two possibilities meaning here. The first is Amanda hit John using a book, and John is holding a book when Amanda hit him, and so on, because I put the other example. So to the next material, I would like to explain about phonological ambiguity. Phonological ambiguity are words that have the same sound but have the different meanings and can be used in very different ways. This ambiguity only occurs in direct conversations in spoken language. in the delivery of speech and others. For example, Annie and Andy go to the school. They need two English books. The word two in the sentence they need two English books and the word two in the sentence Annie and Andy go to the school have similar sound but different meanings. The first, two in the sentence they need two English books means equivalent to sum of one and one, while two in the sentence Annie and Andy go to the school means expression motion in the directions of a particular location. So here we go. I have put the solutions how to avoid ambiguity. There are 4 ways to avoid ambiguity. The first one is you have to choose the right words. When it comes to word choice in terms of lexical ambiguity, the first step you can take is to make sure that the word match. Then go on to consider whatever possibilities you can think of, with a little imagination, of course. And the second way is don't assume that your reader will interpret things correctly. And the third way is you should use commas correctly. Commas exist primarily to resolve syntactic ambiguity. If you are worried that your sentences are too ambiguous, try working on your grammar and punctuation, especially when it comes to commas. And the last is you have to be careful with prepositions. I think that's all of me. If any mistake, please forgive me. And the next material will be explained by Giovanni Firmansyah. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Giovanni Firmansyah. In this slide, I will explain about lexical and grammatical differential. The point one is lexical problem. Truth is what in the language has its own meaning. The actual information it conveys in a text depends, to a great extent, on a text contextual environment. In English, any word have a multiple meaning. There is second. Second has a multiple meaning. And the first is 30. And the example, the clock holds seconds. And then the second example is kedua, with words second change. In the next slide is about different meaning in other language. The English example is rice. Rice has many meaning. There are padi, kapah, nasi, and beras. And Indonesian language has example sepak bola. And the first meaning is soccer, and then football, and then football. In translation, many words that have multiple meaning. It is can resolved by consulting dictionaries, terminology bank, and expert. The point two is grammatical problem. Indonesia language is different from past, present, and future situations using the same verbs. English has 16 different tense. English also use numbers, types, and genders. In the next slide is time. Pas, dia melihat kemarin. She watched. Perfect, dia telah melihat. She has watched. Progressive, dia sedang melihat. She is watching. Future, dia akan melihat. She will watch. In English, the time is grammatically marked. In Indonesia, the time is lexically marked. And the last slide about lexical and grammatical problem is plural. In Indonesian, any plural words, there are reduction. The example is buku-buku, oleh-oleh, and makan-makan. And then determiner, and the example is pada, di, suatu. And in the English language, any plural word, there is the change of vowel. And the example is woman to woman. And then transformation. And the example is tooth to teeth.
Idiom is a group of words established by usage as having a meaning not deductible from those of the individual words. Idiom adalah konstruksi yang maknanya tidak sama dengan gabungan makna unsurnya, misalnya kambing hitam. Idiom allows little or no variation in form and often carry meanings which cannot be deduced from their individual component. We cannot normally do any of the following with an idiom. 1. Change the order of the words in it. Number 2. Delete a word from it. Number 3. Add a word to it. Number 4. Replace a word with another. Number 5. Change its grammatical structure. The difficulties of translating idiom. An idiom may have no equivalent in the target language. An idiom may have a similar counterpart in the target language, but its context of use may be different. The two expressions may have different connotations. For instance, or they may not be pragmatically transferable. An idiom may be used in the source text in both its literal and idiomatic sense at the same time, unless the target language idiom corresponds to the source language idiom, both in form and in meaning. The play on idiom cannot be successfully reproduced in the target text. The very convention of using idioms in written discourse, the context in which they can be used, and their frequency of use may be different in the source and target language. Strategies for translating an idiom. Number 1. Using an idiom of similar meaning and form. Number 2. Using an idiom of similar meaning but dissimilar form. Number 3. Translation by paraphrase. Number 4. Translation by omission. Number 5. Translation by compensation. Collocation. What is collocation? A collocation is typically tense as the habitual co-occurrence of individual lexical items. It is a combination of two or more words that always occur together consistently in different texts and contexts in language. Kolokasi adalah penggandengan juxtaposition dua kata yang sudah sangat lazim, sehingga kedua kata ini nyaris tak dapat diganti dengan istilah lain, sekalipun dengan makna yang sama. There are three main types of collocation that affect translation. Number 1, adjective plus noun. A heavy labor, runaway, and economic situation. Number 2, noun plus noun. Nerve cell, government securities, and able. Number 3, verb plus object. Pay a visit, score a victory, and read a paper. The problem in translation collocation. Number 1, the engrossing effect of short text patterning. It is easy to assume that as long as a collocation can be found in the target language, which conveys the same or similar meaning to that of the source collocation, the translator will not be confused by the difference in the surface patterning between the two. Example, strong tea is literally tense tea in Japanese. Number 2, misinterpreting the meaning of source language collocation. A translator can easily misinterpret a collocation in the source text due to the interference from his or her native language. This happens when a source language collocation appears to be familiar because it corresponds in form to a common collocation in the target language. Strategies. Larson proposed some strategies in analyzing meaning in collocation. 1. Collecting data. 2. Sort the collocates into generic classes. 3. Regroup the context according to the collocates which belong to the same generic classes. 4. List and label the sense of the words.